Pocket Gamer puts on the big indie pitch at pretty much shows all around the world. We're going to be doing this again at GDC. We did it at GDC last year. I think it's happening at Casual Connect in Barcelona. And so what this is it gives indies an opportunity to get press coverage for their games, both published and live games. It's really hard when you're an indie game dev to know how to do PR, right? I mean, you're a developer. You're not necessarily a copywriter or a publicist. And so what Pocket Gamer likes to do is call on our peers in the industry. We're so grateful to have Technorati and friends here today to give tips to the indies on how to pitch to press. And then we also it's not just an opportunity for coverage, but it's also an opportunity to win some cool prizes. And AppFlood was nice enough not only to sponsor this event, but also to donate a Nexus 7. So that's one of the prizes. And Pocket Gamer, if you win and you have a live game, Pocket Gamer is actually giving a 2-week banner to help you with your user acquisition. So there's some neat prizes, but it's definitely an opportunity to learn how to pitch the press. We also are very lucky because we have Michael Ehrenberg here with us today. And just like we've had Google Play and Facebook come in the past, Michael's going to share his experience of how, as an App Store manager, he would help devs get an editorial feature from Apple, which is one of the most valuable things you can do for your game. So what I'm going to do first is I'd like to introduce you to, again, our amazing sponsor, AppFlood. Without our sponsors, we could never do any of this. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to call up Jeff Scott. Jeff Scott to the stage. Jeff is the editor-in-chief of 148 Apps, which is a Pocket Gamer company, so we're in related companies. Jeff, why don't you come and take the stage? And Jeff, tell us a little bit about, so Jeff is going to be going, for those of you who are participating, Jeff is going to be going to table A, which is in front. Jeff, tell us a little bit about things that you appreciate when devs are pitching you for press coverage for their games. Hey, can we have sound? Guys, can we have sound? Sound on mic.
Hello? Okay. Hi there. I think the biggest thing for me is we see close to 300 pitches every day. So whatever you can do as a developer to make it easier on the writers, I think that's the key right there. Get everything together in one place. Dropbox is great for that. Get a big folder, dump a ton of screenshots, your press release, videos, all kinds of stuff like that. Send us the link to that rather than sending us a 40 meg zip file. Basically just look at it from our perspective. What would you want? And just make sure you get it all in one place. Because if it gets to the point that we have to start asking questions, there's a chance we're not going to. We're just going to skip to the next pitch.
It's Bourque, Andre Bourque.
Andre Bourque. Andre Bourque is the editor-in-chief of Technorati, and he and his band of journalists have been doing an amazing job covering Apps World. Followed you guys closely yesterday. Andre, tell us, what do you look for in pitches?
So this is interesting. During the kind of pre-gathering of the judges here, I was introduced to this
Flappy Bird?
Flapping bird. Right? I can't get past the first thing. But here's what I'm really interested in, how it plays into if you're developing an app. What are the best known methods, right, that you can gather from something like Flapping Bird as far as adoption? And what do you learn from that? Tell me what you've learned from that you're building into your app, because that's what I want to know about.
Oh, very cool, for hooks. All right, so look at top performing games and tell us how yours is similar. Awesome. So I'd like to call up Byron Gordon, who's also a Technorati journalist. He's a games writer, and let me introduce you to Byron, who's going to be sitting at Andre's table, actually. So Byron, would you tell us top tips for pitching you for press coverage?
Audience engagement.
Wait, what is that?
Idea, audience engagement. Have your 1-minute video ready to go. Send me a link. I don't want to have to read excessively. I want to get it right when you send it to me. As you know, you're in a profession where most apps will fail. Learn from the failures. It's going to help tremendously with your app. And keep those three bullet points: idea, audience, engagement. I'm going to be more impressed with your idea around the app rather than you just selling me on the app itself. Idea, the audience, and the engagement. Those are three essential bullet points.
Well, that's cool. So, if like an idea, can you give us an example? When they come to you, they have 2 minutes to pitch. How would they incorporate idea, engagement, and audience?
Well, you're going to have to sell me on the novelty. If it's just a shoot 'em up bang bang, you better come up with something creative about why the shoot 'em up bang bang is any different than the vast others. So your idea is going to have to integrate novelty of some sort, some angle, something new that hasn't been done before, that is pushing the envelope in some way. Is there an audience for this app? If no one's there for it or nobody likes it, how are you going to be successful with it? I think the idea itself is the best way to start, but understanding why people would be entertained by the app is just as essential. And then finally, the engagement. How do you plan and propose to keep your audience engaged with this app? The cycle that you have planned for it, the beta testing, the forums, the areas that you're, the influencers that you're particularly interested in. It's going to be important just to pitch me about who's going to be playing this game, who's your target audience.
Let's call up Steve Peterson. Awesome. Steve actually writes for both Games Industry Biz and A-List Daily, along with a bunch of other sites. Very valuable contact for you to have. Steve, thanks for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about your top tips on how to pitch you for press coverage?
Okay, thank you, Martine. Basically, the first thing that I recommend is that you understand the publication that you're pitching and you tailor your pitch. So you're going to get a better result if you understand the audience of each different publication and you know what they're interested in, and you can adjust your pitch to do something that will be of interest to that audience. For instance, my publication, A-List Daily, is about marketing for games and entertainment. So I'm looking for things that impact marketing in games, either things that are important to the industry as a whole or that have a special marketing target. For gamesindustry.biz, it's not a consumer site, it's for industry professionals, people interested in the industry. So the business part of what you're doing is the important thing. And other sites have their own angles. So the better you understand that, the more you can tailor your pitch, the more likely you are to get picked up. And the second thing is, if you want to get your story placed, you have to have at least one hook and probably several. And you also have to explain to me why that matters. In other words, what's a hook? A hook can be, this game was created by somebody famous. Shigeru Miyamoto is doing an iPhone game. Okay, that's a hook. I'm going to write about that. Or a hook can be the nature of your game mechanic, or the fact that you're getting 60 frames a second of some great animation. It can be technological, it can be a business thing, it can be a person. This is Justin Bieber's first app that he's designed, okay? So that's a hook, but you also have to explain to me why it matters. Why does my audience care that Justin Bieber designed this app? Is there a reason that my audience would be interested in it? So if you can explain that, essentially you've handed me a story on a platter and made it easy for me to write that one as opposed to the other 100 things that I got pitched during the day, which I have to sit and think about. Okay, what's the angle on this? How do I make that interesting to my readers? So those two things is tailor your pitch to the publication and then find the hook or hooks and explain why they matter.
Paul Acevedo. Paul writes for the suite of Mobile Nation sites, including Android Central, which many of you know, iMore, and Windows Phone Central. Paul, tell us, what's the best way the dev should be pitching you today?
Hey, we all do handle games coverage a little bit differently, and so my personal preference is, you know, we do app announcements, game announcements, and then we do real reviews later on, and traditionally you go into detail with the reviews, obviously. I want a little more detail in my app announcement. I don't like just regurgitating the press release. So when you do if you send me a press release, what I would really like is at least a little bit of meat with which to construct an interesting article. So I would give some concrete gameplay details, like some people might not be interested in that. I want concrete gameplay details, like, because I don't want to just be told it's an RPG. I want to know, is this even really an RPG? Because I disagree with calling some games that. And then I want to be able to tell my readers what it would be like so they can decide whether or not they would even care to play it. You don't want to just trick them into playing it, like lead them towards a game that they would actually be interested in. And then my other tip is I want monetization and in-app purchase details. You know, like it doesn't have to be a lot, but I would like a little honest description of how you're making money from this game. Because, you know, monetization and in-app purchases, they're a hard thing to get right. If you can't describe it in a way that doesn't sound evil, then it probably is a little too evil. So, you know, just give me something that I can tell the readers so they know what they're getting into. And connecting with that, don't build a game that I have to play every single day and check in every day. I don't know, there's so many games like that, and we journalists, we only have so much time. So if you make me like commit the rest of my life to your game, then that's just really hard to actually give it some hands-on time and cover it properly.
Yeah, really good points. All right, thank you so much, Paul. Coming up on stage is the wonderful Zoya Street. She writes for Games Brief. And Zoya sent me this incredible write-up on all the cool things you guys should be including in your pitches. So tell us, what are you looking for when the devs pitch you their games coverage? Are you on? And you're on now. Okay, that's second question. Then you said you're on.
Is it on? Okay.
Yeah.
Just one thing about if you have made a free-to-play game that you've designed as a hobby, one thing I've noticed some devs do that's really effective is with your review copy for press include some virtual currency, so then they can activate those like purchases to get that energy mechanic going, so they can play it intensely for like an hour rather than having to play it for 2 weeks. But yeah, at Games Brief, we don't do reviews. If you spend more than 10 minutes on Games Brief, you'll learn that. So when people are pitching us at Games Brief, really you're not just pitching your game, you're pitching a story that's interesting to us. That could go one of 3 main ways. It could be that you're sharing some data points. Those data points should not be number of downloads, because downloads are boring. It should be something about the way people are engaging with your game. It could be conversion rate or opt-out or something like that. Or it could be that your story as a developer tells us something about how the sausage is made. And so if your story can give my readers some insight into that, that's a good thing for you to put early on in your pitch email, that you've got an interesting story as a developer. Third way would be anything about the way that your game or your project has affected people. I was interviewing someone a few months ago, and they started telling me a story about one of their biggest whales in their game, and about how she engages with other players socially. And that ended up framing the entire piece that I wrote about that game. So tell me something about people. Yeah.
Excellent. Michael Ehrenberg. This is a real special treat. Apple doesn't ever speak. So to have a former App Store manager tell you how to get an Apple feature is worth hearing about. So let me introduce you to Michael. Again, he's going to be Station I. Dev 7 is going to start with Michael. And tell us, Michael, how do you get an Apple feature? What are you guys looking for?
Thanks. So the first point, which is very specific, is to send in an email. So there's 2 email addresses that you should know. The first one is appstorepromotion@apple.com. And you want to send that in. That's going to go into the team that is on the business side and reviews games to be considered ultimately by the team that makes the editorial features that you see on the App Store every week. The second email address is appstoremarketing@apple.com. So any marketing that you're doing at all that includes your app relative to iOS should be pitched into that team, and they're going to take a look at every single thing that you do that includes anything related to iPhone or your app and give you specific feedback on it. Number 2 is being short and succinct within those emails. As everybody else mentioned, it's a bit of a time crunch. You've got literally hundreds of thousands of developers emailing into a team that is relatively small, and there's just not enough time to go around. So when you email in, think about that and just be as concise as possible. Include all the key information that you would imagine they'd want to see, like your dev name, your app ID, and especially be poignant on the 3 features that you think make your game stand out. Just as everybody else mentioned, it's all about differentiation and giving a hook. And one thing that I really enjoyed seeing was videos. If you can keep it to 30 seconds or less, and imagine that you've got your game and you're pitching it to somebody on the App Store who's looking over your shoulder as you're playing. And if you can condense that down to 30 seconds, that's going to give them a lot better view of your game than they're going to have time to actually go and play through, especially when you're talking about things like RPGs that can take hours. You can look at it and say, look, this first 10 seconds of the video is how you get into the app. The next 10 seconds shows off the best features. And then look at things like social features that might take somebody a long time to get into if they're playing, but you're going to show that off. So it could be 10, 20 levels deep, and now you get a chance to show it to them on the upfront. But you just got to be concise with those videos, but they'll watch it. And that's a fantastic way to get their attention. And then the last point, which a lot of people overlook, is continuously send in emails and try to open up the dialogue. Even if you think that they're not paying attention because you don't get a reply, I assure you that they're going through everything. It's just a matter of time. So if you keep sending in information that's not even necessarily pitching your game, but especially on the back end after you've already launched and you get some analytics and there are trends that you've seen happen on your game, email that in. Just think about, boy, I think they would find this interesting because I did, and typically they can't get to that micro level. They're looking at more of a macro level of the entire store, and those are the key things that'll send them down a path to go check out something else. And it's all predicated on the information that they got from you. So if you can continue to show them that you're a great resource for information that they might not have the time to look into, they're going to come back to you and start to reach out. And just keep funneling that information in, even if it seems like it's a black hole. I promise you it's not. They are truly reading and making decisions based on all the information that they get collectively from all of you guys.
So that's fantastic. So you're not spamming them. I mean, what's the proper cadence? Once a week? Like it's a...
It is tough to tell whether you're spamming them or not. I will say that one of the things I love best about Apple is that they are very direct, and if they feel like you're over communicating and spamming, they'll tell you you're over communicating and spamming me once a week, tone it down a little bit. But don't take that personally as if you personally offended them. It's truly just a matter of balancing the entire ecosystem and all these devs. But I would say I wouldn't go more than a month without sending anything into them to tell them what's happening, and I think maybe twice a month is a good standard to keep to.
Is there a better day, like Tuesday is the day of your features, Friday are better use for the weekend?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's really more the individual that ends up picking up on the other end that particular email. So it's a bit imbalanced. I tend to find Fridays, sometimes I would see notes because it was a little bit of a down day before going into the weekend and I had a bit of time to go through and read, so that for me personally was. But other people are more checking out at that point and they're just looking to wrap up what they've got to wrap up, and then when they come in Monday, your email might be down at the bottom of the pile, so Monday might be a better day. It really just was more dependent on the person, so there's not a specific time, but certainly send something in and be genuine about the way in which you're writing. Make it your own, and whatever you found to be the reason that you love that game, make sure that comes out and shines, and do it in a way that it's really going to translate when they read it.
Okay. So anyway, I'm going to invite Fernando to come. Tell us, top tips. You're a little different. I mean, you're like the ad network, but you're very valuable. You're probably the most important person here because you're having to get users. So tell them a little bit about what they should be doing when they get to your table.
So the interesting thing about being in a position where you're helping people promote their game is that they come to you right at the moment when they start to think about marketing, right? They develop this game, they're ready to go, and they start asking you questions. So you wouldn't believe the number of times I find myself in a position where I'm advising people on all sorts of aspects of marketing. And I would never say that I have better insights about how to get into a press person's inbox than the folks that you've seen here. But I always do advise that PR is probably the best and most effective way for early stage indie devs to get that early traction that's so important. And what I say to them, as far as dealing with the press is concerned, is nothing succeeds like success. Figure out what it is about your game that makes you different and that's showing some traction and success, and then build your case around that. And then the other thing is put yourself in the shoes of the person you are trying to contact. Whether this is in a sort of business context or a PR context, you always want to think about how people are perceiving the inbounds that they get. And you've heard it across multiple people today, right? Make sure everything works, make sure it's well packaged, make sure it's easy to read. And then pick out the best thing about your game and put your best foot forward. So we can talk a bit more about sort of user acquisition stuff, but you guys talk about.
We're going to have time, because we'll do Fernando's presentation at the end, which will be very helpful. Fernando's going to present the prize.